Hello, tech friends, and thank you for tuning into Emerging Technologies in Business, where we take a deep dive into different technologies that are impacting businesses today and in the very near future. I'm your host, Brock Riney, and this podcast is brought to you by Kincannon XR. Let's talk tech. Hello, tech friends. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Emerging Technologies in Business. And today we get the opportunity to speak with Sam Sprigg. He's the head editor of Auganix. Like organic, sounds a little bit the same, but they're an XR industry news and intelligence resource, keeping us all up to date with the latest and greatest in the industry news. Sam, thanks for being here. Thanks for hopping on the show. How's the day treating you so far, good sir?
Yeah, very good, and thanks for having us, Brock. It's been a pretty good day. Rainy day here in Vancouver in the middle of summer, so can't really complain too much. So,
Not too bad. I'm down here in overly too hot Texas, but we go from AC to AC to AC, so we don't really ever feel it ourselves either.
Yeah, no, I mean AC's not really a thing here, but umbrellas more than that.
That's usually how it works up in that area. So tell me a little bit about Auganix. Like, what made you start this venture in order to bring AR, VR, XR content to the masses? I've read a lot of your articles, and they're very, very interesting. But I think no one, at least our listeners, may not be familiar with what you bring to the table right now. And we'd love to hear from you and understand a little bit more about it.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for listening to it as well. I mean, it started like I used to work for a couple of companies back in the UK, and they both did kind of various news and or intelligence and one was for like the UK water sector, so it was all like sewage and sludge, and here's the Thames Barrier and all that sort of stuff. And that was kind of how I first got my start, I guess, in the research and business intelligence side of things. Then I moved on to another company that did the same sort of thing, but for like logistics. And these were both, companies leading in their respective areas, as both information resources for business intelligence and also as news outlets. And yeah, I worked for them for a few years, and it kind of, I don't know. I mean, there was something about sewage that to me wasn't super glamorous, and logistics I did find logistics I did find interesting. I'm like always really interested in huge like ships and stuff like that. So I found it kind of cool, but it was still like it wasn't like I wasn't super passionate about it. And I don't know. I just saw that they offered a good service, kind of a solution that people found utility in and found useful. And it literally was like, what could I do this sort of thing on? But, that I would enjoy, about something that I would find interesting. And this was maybe like 5 years ago now that I kind of had this thought to dip my toe into this kind of, I guess the publishing industry, to be honest. And I was just like, like virtual reality, that was kind of really the only, I mean, there was augmented reality as well, but it wasn't as mainstream as VR. And I was just like, I'm just going to start, writing about that and researching and stuff. And I kind of built the site, Auganix. Yeah, I mean, I guess I started 5 years ago. I mean, it's only really properly been going for about 2.5, 3 years now. But it was purely like, it's literally started as a hobby. Like I was like, I find VR stuff kind of cool, and I want to learn more about it. And then it's just sort of snowballed into this thing where like, now I'm writing news about it every day, and it's kind of helped me like forge a career in the industry, I guess. So it's. Yeah, what started as a hobby is now, the kind of the news resource that I edit daily and people read daily, and that's kind of where we are now.
It's kind of amazing how that works, though, right? So you end up finding something that is just, even if it's not an immediate passion, it's still like, hey, this is interesting enough to me to where it's going to keep my attention. It's like me hosting a podcast. I mean, it's the exact same thing where this wasn't something I immediately thought I was going to be doing, but turns out I'm pretty decent at it, and I actually really enjoy it. So this thing could grow into anything that it turns into, and it sounds like the same thing has happened for you. A couple of the questions I like to ask, especially for you, because you get to see all the latest and greatest technology, so it's great to get to speak to a kind of a similar mind where you've probably gotten to have the opportunity to see some of the things that probably the mass public hasn't, right? So just talking VR, AR, XR related. So I know you have seen several articles that you've written about Sense Glove and different haptic feedback gloves. And I myself have seen the ideals of the trackpads. How close do you think we are to Ready Player One of literally changing the way that we're living our lives today and the haptic feedback and where it's gone? Like, where do you see that being, just based on some of the articles that you've written and some of the industry knowledge that you know about right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, like Ready Player One, I kind of see that that's sort of my example that I use, for people who don't know about VR or haptics or anything like that, like that would be like, if you've seen that film, like that stuff, what I will usually say is we could be there now, in the sense, if you go to the very best of those technologies, it's certainly nowhere near a consumer level. Like, that's not something you can't just go on, online and order your kind of haptic feedback suit. But in terms of some of the technology, well, no, not yet
anyway.
But like, the technology is certainly there, like in terms of, it's very bulky and stuff, but the suits, for example, like, when he's kind of having the fight with, I can't remember the guy's name, the head of the corporation that's trying to take over the Oasis, and he like kicks him in the groin, and then it's that whole kind of ripple just all up his body. And that bit, like, technically you could, if you wanted to, put a load of vibration pads or even like the electric shock stimulators. You could line a suit with as many of them as you can. Like, I don't think it's a question of can we do it. I think we can. It's just like, would we want to? Like, is it worth the cost? Like, consumers aren't going to spend $200,000. Like, you think back to the first VR headsets, and they cost something like $80,000 US or something.
Right.
And it was like, no one's going to spend that money. And I think it's at a point where you probably could do the same thing with the, kind of the haptic suits, for example, now. But like, it's not a commercially viable product. But I think technologically, there is almost, we're almost certainly at that point, maybe not with the pulleys and stuff, but at the same time, like, I don't know, there's companies developing stands that will basically hold a human up on a kind of, a big, just like crane arm, and then you can kind of just run and jump and all that sort of stuff. Exactly. And I mean, the treadmill side of things, like, I'm sure you've seen that viral video, the guy playing the, like, I can't remember what game it is, but some horror game.
It looks kind of like a Call of Duty type of
something
game.
Like that. But he like sprints, he's like booking it out of that room. But it's like, and he's supported in the treadmill thing. So like, in that sense, I think we're there, but like, we're not there yet. Like, technologically we can, if every kind of great mind and company behind the leading tech put all their money behind it, we're like, we need to build this suit now. We could, I'm sure we could do it, but it's not something that's kind of going to reach mass market. It doesn't really have a use case that's worth sinking that much funding in at the moment. And I think as well, people think about this specifically from like a gaming point of view. Right. When it comes to, like the enterprise stuff, I was at AWE at the start of June. And one of the things I tried there was, it was like a surgical training platform, but it used these haptic controllers. So you kind of had these two pens. I can't remember the company it was from now.
Killed so many people that day.
I was a very good surgeon, actually, apart from cutting the wrong bone at the first point. Like,
steady hand.
Round 2 was very good. I made the right incision, but it was crazy. Like, I don't want to name drop the company in case I get it wrong. It's a different company, but there was a lot of healthcare providers there. But it was crazy. Like, it was, you kind of put the headset on, and then you held these two kind of, I guess they were pens, which sort of emulated whatever surgical tool you were going to use, whether it was a scalpel or whether it was like a drill or, the kind of one of these bone saw things. And it like blew my mind. Like, if you cut into soft tissue, this pen was, built into this haptic feedback stand, I guess. So if you cut into soft tissue, you could feel it was kind of bouncy, like that. And, you had that resistance, like a real life resistance, that for what it would feel like if you were to like poke your own leg now, you could feel it sort of bouncing, springing back like that. But then when you got
kind of gross in a weird way, actually.
It totally was.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
A little gross.
it was, it's like, not for the squeamish sort of thing, especially coupling that with people who get, motion sickness in VR. Like, that's kind of the deadly duo. You don't want that.
I can imagine, like, they're double sick at this point. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, we're going to test out cutting flesh today.
Oh, I'll get on to the next bit in a minute. But like, once you cut through the bone, it was like rock solid, and there was resistance from the thing, and you couldn't move it. And it was just like, it was really impressive. And I think it might have been, I want to say Fundamental VR, but I don't know. I could check on my own site now, but it was a healthcare. I think it was Fundamental VR, and it just blew my mind. Like the way it felt using this technology, like 100% surgeons are using that now to learn, and it was so impressive. And that's that's something that your average consumer is not aware exists. But in terms of are you going to train on a cadaver that costs money to sort of have a mortuary there or a morgue and store bodies until they're ready to be used by trainees? And then you've got to have the costs of refrigeration and all the other things, have someone on staff. Or you have this VR training program and these haptic tools where you're essentially, you can do it as many times as you want. You can do the incision as many times as you want. And it's a safe to fail environment. You're not practicing on a real person, but you have that feedback that you would get in real life. And stuff like that's the stuff that impresses me. And going back to across the way, there's a company called OVR Technology, which is basically they offer olfactory VR in terms of you can smell like these scents they create. They have a scent pack that clips onto the glasses.
So funny.
And so at the conference, like they were doing all that cool, like, oh, here's a rose, and you pick up this rose bulb in VR and you smell it, and you bring the virtual rose to your nose, and then you smell a rose, and then you turn it over and there's a bulb, and then you smell soil, and it starts to rain, and you smell like the rain. And that one was incredible. Like I think that one won Best in Show actually for VR.
Now, how did that end up working? So was that like a little clip-on thing that went onto the VR helmet itself, or did it go on the controllers, or how did they manipulate that in order to make those smells?
So it was this kind of clip-on thing. You had your headset there, and then just underneath
standardized VR.
Yeah, so just underneath it was in front of your nose, and I assume how it works is within the experience. Just how you'd if you were to like poke an object in VR and you get haptic feedback, the same trigger would be when you pick up an object, a certain smell is released on the. It's basically they call it a scent.
Kind of reminds me of the old school Mickey Mouse, whatever those were called, the picture scopes, right? Where you would pull it down and the next one show up. So kind of same general idea. Oh, here's a rose. We pull this down. That goes underneath your nose.
Pretty much.
Now here's some fresh dirt. And then that one shows up.
But a lot more fluid than that, because it was all these different, it wasn't like, oh, here's the rose, hold it there for 5 seconds while the thing loads. It was like you could move the rose in front of your nose like that and smell rose and then bulb and then rose.
Where it was moving?
And it was crazy.
Now that's cool. So movement directional smell, that's an interesting concept, right? Because when you start getting into things like haptic feedback, right? So haptics really are what make us feel like the real world are around us and perceived to be in the right place. If we could add smelling haptics to our real world adventures, holy crap, that's where the world changes, right? Mm-hmm. That's where all of a sudden putting on that VR headset and playing at a poker table, you can smell the felt, you can smell the smoke from other people that are smoking, you can smell that resistance ambiance, and like that's where true immersion comes in, Sam.
100%.
Like that's the best. I understand now why they won Best in Show, because once you add in a different sense, that just changes what our mental perception of acceptance really truly ends up being,
Totally.
That is super cool.
It was so
Was there
different.
anything else that was amazing cool that you saw at AWE this year?
I mean, there's always cool stuff there. Like they have the playground, and that's. I mean, the Vario headsets. One thing I kind of say to people is, kind of back to the Ready Player One thing. Like, are we there yet? I think it always comes down to that whole argument of like, are we already living in a simulation? Like, if you get to the conspiracy theory side of things, but if you take that to its end, the final kind of point of all this technology is with visuals, VR headsets, the whole point is to build a headset that will display something that is indistinguishable from reality. With something like the Vario headsets, I think we're already there. Like, I've put on, I remember the first time I tried the Vario headsets, probably in 2019, and I put it on and was just like, well, this is clearer to me than actual real life. Like
in real life.
It was weird. I mean, obviously, because it's right in front of your head, but it was weird. It was like you're in this kind of artist studio, and you couldn't really do very much apart from just like look around. But like it had, like paintings everywhere and a whole wall of books and CDs, and you could read the spine on like a CD case with like, and you could see what the text said. It was nuts.
So defined. It's so crazy. And the thing is, that's not the end of it either, Sam. So I had the pleasure. I got to interview Matt Sagoyanov from Vario on the show.
Yeah.
And that technology is not just limited to the VR headsets. Those are coming to our cell phones. So that version of cloud computing and what it's going to be able to change for all of us is extremely real. And I think a lot of the mass public don't know how important Vario is. They're huge in this industry, and they're going to change the world very, very, very quickly. Just like you were saying, the ability to show such minute detail, even while on a VR headset, that's streaming the entire time. No other company has been able to keep up with that so far. They are leaps and bounds ahead of everyone, and I think everyone's going to be following suit. So I want to shift gears, though, if that's okay. I know we were talking about AWE, but I've got to ask somebody who's also in kind of the industry knowledge hub of the world, what your opinion is going to be of Apple AR and Apple VR. It seems like the entire world is just waiting for these specific glasses for mass adoption, but everyone else is making some strong headways in the meanwhile. So, Sam, one of the other big things that I'm inquisitive about, especially with you being in the AR, VR, and XR community, is what your thought process is on Apple AR and Apple VR. We've all been waiting. We've all been anticipating that they're going to make some sort of announcement here soon. And there's a lot of companies that are waiting for Apple to make that announcement simply because they seem to be the mass adopters of the society in this world. And they allow all the other companies to walk around in the dark, run into the walls, bruise up their knees while they find the right path forward to make the best consumer-based product. So what's your take on Apple AR and VR?
I mean, obviously I'm excited, and you know, I'm an Android guy. I have my Android phone. We're doing the call on a Mac. Like I kind of flip between both ecosystems of Apple and Android. So I really can't wait. Like I do think that when Apple does something, they do it knowing that it's going to work. Like I don't think they ever kind of half-ass anything. Like
they really don't. Yeah.
You look at the iPod, the iPod Touch, even like that was going for what? I can't remember how many years. Like it was going for a length of time.
Long time, yeah.
And it was also like the first thing like it that came out, and it was, you know, with the original iPhone. That was, I mean, it wasn't technically the first touchscreen, but they were the first. You know, Apple was the company that brought touchscreen
compared to the Samsung Blackjack 2. I think the Apple iPhone was doing pretty well. I was actually working in retail and in cell phones at that time, and it was a feeding frenzy for iPhones. You couldn't sell someone a Samsung or any sort of Android or BlackBerry even device at that time. It's been hugely different at that time. Apple knows what they're doing.
Oh,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just thought that was funny because I was in those stores doing that, and the only answer was, I want an iPhone. That was it.
Yeah, pretty much. And I back in the day when I was at university, I went to like a job interview at Apple, actually, just to work in the Apple store as whatever advisor or genius bar or something like that. And I guess I can say how they do it. Like other people have done it; it's not a secret. But you kind of go in with a load of other candidates, and they sit you down, and they do what's called their like brag reel, and they kind of show you a video of like what Apple does, and basically they just brag about like this is how great we are, and you know, like rightfully so, like the stuff they do is amazing. But they were talking about one thing, and like maybe this is like an old wives' tale now. I don't know. I feel I've retold it so much that it must be true. But you know, their Apple store in Shanghai. I don't know if you've seen that, but the entrance for it is above ground, and it's this kind of cylindrical glass structure, and then you just go down this cylinder downstairs. It's a really cool store, actually. I've been there before, and it was. But they basically like went to all these glass manufacturers all around the world, and we want this entrance to be built. And every glass manufacturer was like, we can't do it. Like, it's just not. We can't build curved glass like that. So Apple, basically getting all these no's from everyone, what they do is they go and buy their own glass manufacturer and then just make it themselves. And they're like, okay, we did it now. And then, you know, the same thing with like, you go into Apple store, they have this kind of uniform branding across the entire globe. Like they have that nice kind of Italian marble or slate, whatever it is, that just, you know, that color flooring. And they basically bought a quarry and they own the rock from that quarry. So they just ship it out to all their stores. And that's what I mean. Like when they do something, like we're going to do it the way we want to do it because we know what's going to be, you know, what's going to work, what's going to be cool. And I think with their VR or mixed reality or augmented reality or whatever way they put it out, I have a feeling it'll be something like a mixed reality headset. I mean, I think it's gonna change the game in the sense that it's gonna do for awareness of the technology, what Pokemon Go did. Like, no one kind of would have
Exactly.
really bothered about augmented reality before. They would have been like, even to the point where, Snapchat filters and Instagram filters and stuff, they are they are augmented reality filters. But I don't think people would be like, oh, I'm just going to use this augmented reality lens from Snap, knowing it's, consciously knowing it's an AR feature. Whereas when they use something like Pokemon Go, that was like, oh, this is an augmented reality game. And it was suddenly the concept of that technology was right in front of them and everyone was using it. And I think it's going to be the same with, whatever Apple's hardware device is, whether they do have a reality OS and all that sort of stuff, like it's going to serve a purpose, because they're not just going to release something just for the sake of, we have this gimmicky thing. It's going to literally serve a purpose, and it will change the way people work, because this is what Apple does. Like even the new MacBooks and stuff, like they've got the touch bar. I don't know how long they've had that for now, but I love having some, that kind of feature on the Mac. And it's like, it's such an obvious thing, but I'm like, if I use something without the touch bar, I'm just like, oh damn, I really miss that.
It's kind of frustrating. You just miss it. Like it's kind of it becomes an expectation that when it's gone, kind of angers you a little bit. Like, well, why isn't this here? This should have been here. And
totally. And
like getting an iPhone without an app store, like this is kind of useless to me. Like, why would I bother with this? And I mean, I think the adoption rate's going to come when they get to glasses. They're like the ones that you're wearing right now. Like that's where I think that over the hill adoption rate is going to happen, right? The moment that you can tell me that wearing glasses is going to allow me to watch a YouTube video in my bottom left-hand corner, keep a timer on how long the chicken's been inside of the oven, and at the exact same time alert me for all of my social media posts, that's where I see real, true adoption. Even further so, think about having the ability of having your glasses on just like you do day to day, and you're pulling a chicken out of the oven, and you're able to tell the internal temperature just by wearing your glasses. And we already have those signature capabilities right now, but add those into a glass, and that's where that real life of, okay, it's not that I'm putting these on to play a game. I'm putting on my glasses. And that's what in my mind, the expectation needs to be. I'm putting on my glasses for my day, and these are going to help me complete my day better. We hit that mark. There's no coming back. We'll never come back, honestly.
And I think a lot of people don't understand, again, a lot of people who aren't in the industry, I don't want to sound condescending, but it's a lot of people are like, why would I bother with that? Why would I, if I don't already wear glasses, why would I want to put them on? But I kind of look at it as, you see those old photos from like New York or London, people on the tube, and everyone's got a newspaper, and they're all just sat with their head in their newspaper. And then now it's like, oh, times don't change. You've got the newspaper, and then today everyone's down looking in their phones. And it's like, well, as much as that seems like, why would I need to look at my phone on my glasses? For me, honestly, I do believe that it's like, that's just what's going to happen. Like, personally, I'd rather be walking around and seeing the stuff around me. Like, and I'm guilty of it. I'll be walking along the pavement and kind of,
we all do it.
Yeah, and it's
get down at your phone the whole time while you're walking, and run into a stop sign or anything
totally,
else in the way, let alone oncoming traffic.
And it's like even things like texting and driving. Like obviously you shouldn't do it. People still do it, especially in Vancouver. I see people texting and driving all the time, and it's like surely it's just more inherently safe to like be looking at the road, but then also oh okay, so and so's text me, and hey, voice command, yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes or whatever. Like
85% of your view is a lot better than 50% because you are doing this the whole time.
Yeah.
Whenever you're looking down at your phone. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, but Ben, it's funny you bring it up. Like I got them out before the call. Obviously, like these are the North glasses. I don't know if you've seen these before. Like these, I used these. They look kind of goofy, like from the side.
But they're not a far generation off. It's not like you're wearing this huge bulky thing,
And like, I mean, this is just a case of shrinking the kind of the hardware on the sides. But like, these,
and we know that everything gets smaller with time, right?
Exactly.
Microchips get smaller. We saw that video from Facebook from Mark Zuckerberg where he had 5 different types of helmets that he wanted to put into one. Well, that's what we're looking at right now. And the iteration that you're wearing is the 5-in-1, right? It's we're not to the final product yet, but man, when we get there, Sam, like that's game. No one's changing that. It's not coming back from that point.
No, and it's going to be exactly the same with touchscreen phones. You know, like that's genuinely how I see it. And people are like, yeah, you know, of course you're going to be on the like let's go, you know, XR industry side of things because you work in it. But it's like,
right.
I mean, for me, like I report on it. As much as I want the industry to do well, you know, it's kind of, I still report on the bad stuff, you know, like, and it's one of those things though. I genuinely believe like it's, like you say, there's no coming back from it. Once people sort of realize like this makes more sense to have your notifications in your eye line. And some people talk about, oh, that's a nightmare scenario, a nightmare world. It's like, well, I mean,
some people didn't want stop signs at the end of the street either. You know, it turns out those were a good idea.
Exactly, and it's, you know,
I look at it,
and I can't see it doesn't seem to be any different really in terms of, you know, the same as using your phone. Like there's some stuff I've seen, and it's like, you know, the glasses are controlled by your phone. And I see that and I'm like, what's the point? Like for me, there's no point in that. However, if your phone is like, you know, the kind of the processing
connected,
unit,
that's
exactly.
Fine. Yeah.
Essentially your phone's just going to turn into the whole, you know, the puck that does the, you know,
exactly. It's going to be the hub. Work. It's going to be broadcasting and that's it. And that's where we're going to be long term. I just see our phones as something that, like you said, is going to be an ancillary product, honestly. It's either going to get smaller or more compact, or to the point where, honestly, even the glasses could do it all.
Yeah.
Is the phone really, do we really need to hold anything? And let's talk about society as humans. We get lazier. That's what we do over time. We try not to hold anything in our hands for any amount of time. We want everything to be hands-free. We want all the information right here, right now, when I want it, how I want it, delivered the way that I want it to be delivered. And if it's right in front of our eyes, it's a heck of a lot less steps to go through.
It is.
I think that's the way it could be.
And you even look at stuff like, you know, Apple Watch. Like when that came out, people would be like, why do I need a watch to show me what's on my phone? Like, but if it saves you having to reach into your pocket and get your phone out, instead of, you're skipping that reach in, like you say, people are lazy. Rather than reaching in, you're just like, okay, well, it's right there now. And, you know, look at how popular smartwatches are. Like it's something that's, I don't think anyone would have imagined they'd be as popular as they are. But, you know, I'd be surprised if people kind of can find an argument against them now, because everyone's checking their text on their phone, on their watch. And it's just, I feel it's just, you're just kind of moving it closer and closer to your face. Like, you know, that's how we interact. It's becoming
ingratiated to your body, and that's what it's going to do long term. So long term, the phone and the watch will really become one, because I would assume something that's touching your temples would be able to take your blood pressure or your heartbeat or anything else like that. And the glasses, just having sensors on the side of your temples here, might be able to do specifically that. I really think that's where we're going. I think the glasses is going to replace both of them, but the hub could just end up being or the phone could end up just being a hub for everything else that you need. Yeah. But even I've talked to athletes who are in high intensity training, and they've told me that the wearables that they use right now, they're distracting. So having just something that they could wear over their eyes during a high intensity workout could be something that would be naturally beneficial for them to achieve like a maximized workout too.
Totally.
And even some other companies are working on AR contacts for that specific reason as well, just to keep them focused, knowing exactly what's going on. And the eyes are obviously the window to the soul, as we've all heard before. And if we're going to make the most benefit out of any sort of new technology, it sure seems like that type of technology is the one that's going to be huge. I'm super excited about it. Sam, I've taken up a ton of your time today. I'm sorry to do that to you, but I've really enjoyed talking to you. Sam, if our listeners here wanted to be able to reach out to you or to read some of your work, what's some good ways for them to reach out to you on social media and learn a little bit more about what you do?
Well, best way, social media is probably Twitter, and the handle is at Auganix, which is AUGANIX. And yeah, otherwise just straight through the website, auganix.org. Which always throws people off because it's the org of augmented reality, and then .org as in organizer. So yeah, maybe I got the thing wrong with that, but yeah, I mean that's the best way. Just to Google Auganix, ARVRX or whatever, and you know we should pop up hopefully at the top of the results for you there.
We'll make sure that you're listed below in the contact here. And honestly, it's been a great conversation with you, Sam. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
And for all listeners at home, you know, that's really it for today. I hope you enjoyed our episode today with Sam. If you didn't, I don't know what other type of content to present you. It's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And if you did like this content today, though, please go on here and give us a like, put a comment down, subscribe to our channel. You can also find us on social media at KinCannonXR or at ETIB Podcast. I want to thank KinCannonXR for hosting our podcast, and I've been your host, Brock Riney, and we'll talk some more emerging tech next time. Talk later. Bye-bye.